Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me make sure I am up and streaming. I am seeing green, so yes. And let me check my mic for 1 second. I always check this because I don't like to take chances on it. Like I said, I've done like entire videos and later on I'm pantomiming. And that's one more thing to check. Good. The world is good. So guys, first, before I start, I want to thank all my subscribers, thank all the people who like and share my videos. Also, I want to thank my patrons and the people who donate super cash. You guys are immensely important. I am trying to make the show a little bit more than what it's been in the past. I'm trying to expand it to something that's more part-time. That just takes a little bit more devotion to time and energy. But either way, you guys are immensely appreciated. Thank you very much. Also, but I do shows somewhat randomly. Well, yes, randomly, completely randomly, and it's usually I get a strikes my fancy, and I'm like, I'm gonna do a live show. So please click the bell. Apparently, subscribing is not enough. The bell needs to be clicked to make sure that you get your notifications for the shows. At some point, I'm going to do these things at a standard time, but for right now, please click the bell. So recently, I did a show asking about a shakeup at TYT, to seeing was there some drama brewing at TYT. Somebody said, hey, check out Dore's account, meaning they were kind of pushing this idea that maybe there was. So I kind of want to explore this. I want to actually look more into this. Now, before I start, I don't really have a bias against TYT. Like, I don't have a grudge. I don't have any issues at all. In fact, I don't have any issues with any social media personalities. But I've come across people who intensely dislike that network. And I got to be honest, I don't quite understand why, which is the reason why I'm kind of interested in this question, posing this question. And this is two parts. One, in posing the question, I'm giving feedback on what I think it is, on what I think the change is, or what I think is the thing that calls people to feel this way, this intense dislike. And exploring it a little bit, and then asking others what do they think at the end for the part that allow the audience to comment. Like I said, I don't have a hard edge on this. I don't have the thing in me that it digs in me like fucking Uygur. I don't necessarily have that thing. I don't have that thing for most things, but to be fair. But I do ask myself, well, wait a minute. When is the time that you started? Like, when is the time that you stopped? Because at some point, there was this natural just stopping. I realized that the things that was in my lineup had nothing to do with TYT. And so at some point, there was a change. And so I started interrogating the moment that I stopped. And I remember it. I distinctly remember it. It was this guy, this time. During the election season, I watched TYT because they covered the courage of Sanders. And I was one of those kind of wayward watchers that I used to watch it, then a little bit more, a little bit less, just depending on the time. But I started heavy during the time Sanders was running because their coverage of it was bar none. They were fucking amazing at covering Sanders. His debates, his speeches, all those things. When mainstream media was ignoring them, they were covering Bernie Sanders. You go through a point where they started having breakdowns. Like they started to have spaz outs on the show itself. And when it became clear that Hillary Clinton was going to be running, and that it was going to be Clinton and Trump, and that Donald Trump in no way was not falling behind, meaning Hillary Clinton couldn't pull away from him, and many times closer it got to the polls, those polls started to flip. Anna started to lose it, and eventually Jen came out with this. Let's see.
5 days till decision time. And so I have made a decision. Now, I'm not in the camp that this was an easy decision. Oh, come on, third parties. You just dismiss them out of hand. They never had a chance. This is a crazy election. At some point, yes, they did have a chance. And Gary Johnson was up to 12%, which is a huge number for a third party. And he was trending upwards. If they had been allowed in the debates, this might be a different conversation altogether. I wanted to hear them all out. I did hear them all out. I interviewed Jill Stein 3 times. I interviewed Gary Johnson. I would have interviewed Gary Johnson more if he had agreed to come on the program more. I would have done a debate between Jill Stein and Gary Johnson. I would have done a debate with all 4 of them if they wanted to. I even asked Evan McMullen on the show. We gave everyone a fair hearing. But at this point, it's time to make a decision, because the reality is Gary Johnson is now at 3% and Jill Stein is at 2%. They are not going to win. So you could hate me for saying that, and you could get really, really mad, and you can call me shillery, and you can call me a sellout, and you can say I'm trying to help Trump or Hillary or whatever your fantasies lead you to. But and 5 months ago, I was the leading guy saying they should be allowed in the debates, and yes, they have a chance, and yes, they should have a fair hearing. Whether they had a fair hearing or not, and I don't think they did, I think they should have been allowed in the debates. I tried my best to give them a fair hearing. We are 5 days before the election. Someone sitting at 3% in the polls. Right now, there's Gary Johnson advocates going, no way, he's at 6%. Congratulations. Someone at 6% in the polls is not going to win the election 5 days later. Not going to happen. If you don't like reality, okay, that's fine. Okay, you scream into the wilderness. If you've got other reasons you want to vote for a third party and want them to get to 5% in a particular state because of ballot measures or being on the ballot at a later election, etc., I understand. But understand what the stakes are too, because what we have here is not a normal election. So you can have other reasons, but don't pretend that one of the third party people are going to win today, because they're not going to. I know it. It's a fact. And if you don't like me for stating facts, okay, that's a sad day for you. Maybe a sad day for me too. You don't want to watch the show anymore because you don't like facts. That's your choice. Okay, everybody's got a choice. That's what this segment's about. So now people say, well, Cenk, what if I live in a really blue state or a really red state? Why don't I just vote for a third party because I like that guy better, right? Or I like that person better. Okay, you think you live in a swing state. Everybody's positive that they're in a swing state or not in a swing state. Well, New Hampshire, she's at a 6 to 8 point lead. Pennsylvania, she's at an 8 to 10 point lead. That's not a swing state. No. She's got those locked up. Oops, right now, last poll, Donald Trump up by 5 in New Hampshire. You better believe it's a swing state. Her lead in Pennsylvania in the last poll down to 2 points. You better believe it's a swing state. But you don't know that. Everybody thinks they know. Let me tell you an amazing fact. I'm not trying to say that Hillary Clinton's going to win Texas. But in one of the recent polls, she was only down by 4 points. Because the demographics are constantly changing. Ohio used to be a huge swing state, and Democrats had a great chance of winning it. Now it is leaning Republican because the demographics are changing. You're a demographic expert? No, I know. I know what's going to happen in my state. Maybe you do. And I hear you, brother. And I'm not here to say you must vote this way, which a lot of people on TV do. I'm telling you what I'm going to do, okay? So I believe that you should vote like your vote matters, because it does. I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Okay, so now let me explain why. So the vote is not the most important part. I've explained this 1,000 times until I'm blue in the face on the Young Turks. The most important thing is activism. It was civil rights activists like Martin Luther King that got us the change we needed. It was women's rights activists who got us the 19th Amendment, where women had the right to vote. Woodrow Wilson was brought there as president kicking and screaming. He initially opposed it. It wasn't politicians who got us that change, it was activism. So that is the most important part of the funnel, the part where you have the most power even though you don't realize it. And that's where the media will yell at you, don't use that power, don't use that power. Oh, protesting's not cool. Sit at home and be really cool doing absolutely nothing, making sure that we're still in charge of the establishment. Don't believe the hype. They're lying to you. Activism is the most important. Number 2 is primaries. Primaries are the second most important because there you actually have a range of choices. When you get to the actual general election, your choices have been really limited. You're at the bottom of the funnel. But you still have a voice. It's still a real choice. And if you don't use that voice and you don't use that choice, well, then you don't get to complain about it. So you can't say, well, I mean, I didn't do anything, but okay. But the guys who actually did, you voted this way or that way, I'm going to blame you. That's an easy thing to do. That's a coward's choice. So in the real world, we have to make hard choices. even if it's a Hobson's choice like the one we have in this election. Now, people have said, oh, Cenk, you're way too tough on Hillary Clinton because Donald Trump's a monster and you should have been more on her side. Well, that's not my job. I don't work for her. So I covered all the Hillary Clinton stories because they were in the news. So if you wanted me to cover up for her and say, oh, no, she's wonderful because she's running against Donald Trump, that by definition means she's wonderful. That isn't true, and I was never going to say that. Or if you, I guess your other idea is, well, Cenk, you're right about all those damaging stories like the Teneo connections and the consulting firm that led to the Clinton Foundation and how the money went all around and around. You watch all those videos that I did, dozens of videos, because they were right. And there is systemic corruption, and she is part of it. So so I'm voting for her. Does that mean I'm endorsing her? I'm supporting her? No. It just means I have two realistic choices, and I'm making one of them. Because in this world, that's what we live with on a day-to-day basis. It's hard choices. It's not like, oh, guys, our two choices are pits of hell or unicorns and rainbows. Which ones should we go with? Okay? Yeah, well, that's the real world. So I understand that the establishment has laid a trap for us. I'm not unaware of it. I'm the guy who talks about it all the time. So, yeah, they gave you a choice where you couldn't vote for a monster like Donald Trump. Okay, well played, establishment. Nice job. I wasn't for Hillary Clinton in the primaries, and my vote does not mean I support everything she does. Far, far from it. In fact, not in day one, hour one, we plan to protest her.
This video, I mean, I'm not going to play the whole one, but I wanted him to give his opinion, like the whole thing. I didn't want to gut him like part of the way through. I wanted him to explain himself. I wanted you to hear the whole thing. That video, I distinctly remember saying, this is where I get off. This is where I get off. Like, this is where, check please. Yeah, yeah, you have a good day, sir. You know, this was my Stalingrad. This was the thing where I looked at it and says, yeah, fuck that. Fuck that. Saying it's about hard choices and about tough decisions, and the cowardly approach is to not, no, the cowardly approach is to do what you're told, to bend your knee, and to vote for Hillary Clinton, and that's what you did. Saying that your support, I don't support her, I just voted for her. I don't know what that means. I know what he's trying to say it means, but at the end of the day, I don't know what it means. You're voted for support in a political space. You change your network to support her in order to help her to get in because you believe she was a better candidate. That's perfectly fine. But you ran against your own base, if that makes sense. Like, it's the guy who you wanted to win got cheated. Everybody understood that the guy got cheated, and you turn your network to support the person who cheated that particular guy. What happens when they always know that you're complicit and that your network, for the most part, would always fall in line regardless of how much you protest and regardless of how much is bitches. At the end of the day, it's always going to get your vote. What does it mean to hold somebody accountable if at the end of the day, you're still willing to give them your vote? That's what I'm asking. You have more than two choices. You have more than a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And I'm not even talking about Green Party or Libertarian. You had the choice to abstain. I don't like either of these people. Neither one of these people are going to represent my interests. I voted for Jill Stein because that was a person who I thought would represent my interests. Fact is, you perpetuate the behavior. You enable the behavior when you let that behavior continue on and on. And hey, maybe you can say you should have taken this way with Obama. Maybe you should have taken this way with Obama in the first time around. Whatever. It got worse and worse and worse. Meaning, yeah, you ended up with a monster this time. But fact is, that strategy of always being able to vote for the Democrat because you're terrified of the Republican could go on in perpetuity forever. That's an insane strategy. It doesn't get better doing it that way. Things get worse. Democrats normalize Republican behavior. Look, I'm not going to bitch on this point. This was a point where I got off. That was the point. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I fundamentally disagree with the perspective of the show and the host at that point. So maybe this wasn't the day where everything stopped, but this was definitely the day where it started to ebb and ebb and ebb away, as I completely just disagreed with the tenor at that point. Something changed. And mind you, on the show there were other things, disagreements. So there were fights between people like Dore and some of the other people on the show. The most notable one is Mankiewicz. This showed somewhat of a division in the show itself in regards to how these guys were interacting with one another. Everybody else, for the most part, was on board for Hillary. We're with her. Dore was not. Jordan Sheridan, if I'm not mistaken, was not. But between the two, Jimmy was ferociously not for her. And this caused problems among the other hosts on the show. Ben particularly, because if from my standpoint, Ben was being somewhat disrespectful in the way he was acting towards Jimmy Dore. And he's not the only one. Robert Reich has gotten into this argument with Chris Hedges. And Reich is like, are you telling me that Hillary Clinton is not a better choice? Like, indignant about the point of, you know, how dare you say that Hillary Clinton is not better than Donald Trump? Yes, I'm saying she's not better than Donald fucking Trump. She's not. I'm sorry, she's not. You guys perpetuate the same thing by being complicit. You guys are like married to crackhead, a drug-addicted alcoholic, and continuously come in buying him meals and buying him drinks and buying him heroin, and not understanding that the fact that you're buying him heroin and you're being okay with his particular behavior, that you normalize that particular behavior, allows that behavior to perpetuate itself. You guys are political enablers. I'm sorry. Jimmy Dore was right. Jimmy Dore is arguing on that show oftentimes with, you know, against many of the hosts on the show. Let's take a look at this that took place. And this was a pretty nasty argument. I don't know if you can see it. It's in the corner of the show. They were doing coverage of one of the conventions. Take a look at it.
Garland a meeting for a year without batting an eye. So why wouldn't the Democrats be able to do the same thing for 2 years? Saying,
they won't.
Hey, they won't. They should. And if we keep voting for weak sauce, we're going to keep getting more of it.
If you don't vote for Hillary Clinton and we end up with Donald Trump, you're going to bear a bit of responsibility for the...
No, it's her fault for not coming and getting my vote. I want to vote for her.
Then vote for her.
No,
then bite the bullet.
Listen to what he said. He said, you're going to bear... what's going on with my camera? Let's see. 1 second, guys. My camera is being weird. I'm going to play the rest of this video while I try to figure this out. And in fact, let me restart it.
Let me just say real quick on that point. He doesn't have the ability to do that. Right now, the Republicans won't even give Merrick Garland a meeting for a year without batting an eye. Why wouldn't the Democrats be able to do the same thing for 2 years? Saying,
they won't.
Hey, they won't. They should. And if we keep voting for weak sauce, we're going to keep getting more of it.
If you don't vote for Hillary Clinton and we end up with Donald Trump, you're going to bear a bit of responsibility for the...
No, it's her fault for not coming and getting my vote. I want to vote for her.
Then vote for her. Then bite the bullet and vote for her.
No,
it's a grown-up thing.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Not at all.
No,
it's such a bullshit
You've never been more wrong about anything. No, your argument is nonsense. No, yours is a selfish point of...
Short-term thinking that got us where we are right now.
You don't know anything about what's going to happen in 2018. You're thinking we're going to come back and...
What do you fucking know about it?
You don't...
What the fuck do you know about it?
Don't talk to me like that. Don't talk to me like that fucking ever.
What did you just say to me?
I didn't say shut the fuck up.
All right, guys, let's
go
to break.
Let's
go to break.
What do you fucking know about it?
Yeah, and that's incredibly hostile.
You just said it to me.
No, I wasn't.
Break.
I said you don't know what's going to happen in 2018. You're ready to give...
Young Turks anchor Jimmy Dore on the left takes a drink.
All right, so that didn't go well. I fixed the camera. but yeah, clearly you don't want your hosts on the show essentially screaming at each other and yelling obscenities. So there was that, meaning there was conflict. There was back and forth between the hosts of the show on this one. Because you got to be honest, they were terrified. They're looking at it as, oh my God, Donald Trump is going to take the White House. We're terrified. And Ben, for the most part, just considered himself a Democrat. Many of them, I mean, for the most part, vote Democrat. And you have Jimmy Dore, who's at this point saying, fuck that. I am no longer falling in line to this. This only gets worse. and I agree with Jimmy. I agree with Jimmy. But clearly, the host on the show did not. Ben did not. And I got to be honest, the way... Look, I don't like the tone that's associated with some of the Clinton supporters who thought that this was just, you know, from their standpoint, this is the easy choice. Not an easy choice. They cheated your guy. It's a cowardly choice. Let me tell it. I asked Jimmy Dore about this. I had the opportunity to talk to Dore at the People's Summit. And I asked him this. This was one of the things where I had that chance where he was talking to Tim Black. And as he was coming away, it was like the animals eating the leftovers of, of the larger animals. But as he was coming, like, hey, Dore, we're Dore. Put a mic in his face. So listen to what Dore asked. I asked Dore about the conflict at TYT, meaning it was clear that there was some kind of back and forth between you and some of the other hosts. And were you able to mend those fields and have those things been resolved? And let's take a look at what Dore says.
I would imagine that you guys had let's say there was a break in a sense between the division between what you went to and what the other show went to. I would imagine there's a certain amount of stress that went along with that particular process. What was it like being the lone voice in the wilderness saying, I'm not voting for that woman, they cheated my guy, oh, she can go fuck herself with Jill Stein?
It felt good in a sense because I'm allowed that freedom on the Young Turks. They don't tell you what to think. You don't have to toe a company line. They gave me a platform to say what I wanted to say. So.
And you know what? To be fair, that is true. They did give him a platform to say what he wanted to say. They did. I mean, they didn't necessarily force him to say a particular thing in order to stay on the show. So that's right. But he immediately started shilling for TYT. Let's just keep going. That is his network, though.
Big props to the Young Turks and Cenk Uygur for doing that, right? Yeah. Nobody else does that. What it was like was it was difficult. It strained my relationship with certain people on the Young Turks that I had a close relationship with. Yeah. And I'm still, to this day, it's kind of, we've drifted, but, and that bothers me, yeah. Right? And so, yeah, it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't fun to be not on the same page as in the primary, we're all on the same page with Bernie. And so it wasn't that much fun, right? I like being together on the same team, right? So we're kind of back to that now, yeah. In a sense, right? Because they're with the Justice Democrats, and I'm going draft Bernie, but it's the same idea. We're back to getting corporatism out of politics, so that's great.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree, and I think a lot of people watch your show at the very least, regardless of what they think of politics, they look at you as being a different thing, a separate factor. The fact that you're the lone voice in the wilderness, people saying, well, people give a certain amount of credibility. Would you argue that that's a level of integrity versus fear in that election? Like, meaning people were saying, I'm voting for Jill Stein out of integrity, not because I'm terrified of Donald Trump, but because it's almost this thing of, the vote for Jill Stein, in a sense, was saying, look, I'm not going to vote for that person just because they're trying to force me to vote for that person.
I was more afraid of the continuing status quo because it only going one way. Yeah. Things are getting a little bit worse every 4 years. So it wasn't going to get a little bit better. In fact, with Hillary Clinton, it had a chance to get way worse because she radicalizes the right, because she moved to the right. So people forget when Democrats move to the right, the Republicans also move to the right. So people are trying to figure out why the Republicans so batshit off the reservation, right? Well, it's because the Democrats became Republicans. Yeah. It's because when we elected a majority Democratic, a liberal government in 2009 that controlled every branch of government and the White House, we still got a corporatist right-wing healthcare plan.
Yes.
We still didn't get a bailout of Main Street, but we did get a bigger banks out of it, which is crazy. So even when we vote in a liberal, quote-unquote, leftist party, we get right-wing corporatist policies. And we have to stop that.
So, yeah, so at the very least, he's like, look, there was stress in the relationship. I mean, it was clear at that point. I mean, shit, man, you look like he was going to punch Mankiewicz. And you can understand, yeah, if you have some people on the cast who are terrified of Donald Trump, and you have one lone voice saying, no, I'm not falling in line with this is only getting worse, and being complicit in voting for people who, for the most part, are not looking for your interests is not the way I'm going with this. And he's right. He's right. Beyond this, we have this other part where recently, this was State of the Union. When one part, let me say it this way, when Dore still goes after Democrats. He goes after them relentlessly. And in fact, and I agree with him on this, you're not going to get anything out the right. And anything that you're trying to get accomplished, if you're trying to get accomplished through the two-party system, it has going to take place on the Democratic Party. But they are completely ill-equipped to get anything done. They're bought in the same way that the Republican Party is. So he finds that if it's going to have to take place on the left and in a vehicle on the left that's completely incompetent and incapable of getting this stuff done, then I attack the thing on the left. That's the thing that needs to change in this process and in this equation. Otherwise, you have these two factors that persist the way things are. The left is a vehicle that gives voice to this, and that's the party that's failing, meaning they're not living up to what they're philosophically supposed to do. So that's what he attacks. Main show, not so much. The main show, not so much. So you can understand that there is going to be somewhat of a conflict when he's attacking this specific thing, and the main show, in many respects, is supporting that one specific thing. I mean, shit, you have the main person who started your show was associated with Justice Democrats who were essentially trying to get Democrats elected. It's like, come on. You're pushing Democratic candidates. I mean, do you have the capacity to leave or not be associated with the party if you're pushing people into the party itself? I don't have the answer to that question. If Paula Swearengin doesn't win, does TYT support Joe Manchin? How ensconced is TYT into the Democratic Party in this way? This is what I'm getting at. The belief that you're going to board the ship and change things is predicated on getting your people into that particular framework. I am unaware of any framework or any idea of, if you don't win your particular candidate, to not support Democrats in races against Republicans. Are you just the norm of the party at this point? When you're getting $20 million from a Democratic contributor, does that make that guy your donors in the same way that politicians have their donors? And does that put a string or a leash in regards to your content? I don't think these are unfair questions. And I say this as somebody who does not have a bias against TYT in the least. I say this as somebody who, I don't have this thing where just because I disagree with a particular choice that I completely write something off. My stopping of this was just kind of ebb and flow and slowly over time when the content itself didn't jive with what I thought reality to be. Meaning, I think Democrats are also the problem. I agree with Dore on this. Republicans are bad, yes, but Republicans are bad in the way because Democrats have moved so far to the right, it's made them batshit crazier. This is a game. These guys are being bribed. These guys are paid to behave a particular way. Weakness is part of the bribery itself. Nothing changes. Nothing changes with regards to the way politics works if you allow the Democratic Party to remain as feckless and weak and useless as it currently is. The main show doesn't hit that. Dore's show does. There's a conflict. There's a conflict. On the State of the Union show, now this gentleman is recorded the State of the Union show. He was watching Jimmy Dore. That's why he's at the bottom. The link is at the bottom of the thing, but it's like, I'm watching Jimmy Dore, and knows his link. Take a listen to what Dore says, talking about Democrats in this point. And I'm bringing this up for a reason, this very specific point. And Dore talks about this, the main show, less so. And I'm going to talk about why in a moment. But take a look at Dore's commentary on this.
Everyone loves the military. It's our fucking support the troops, which is a meaningless saying. Means absolutely nothing. Yeah, I wish he really missed a chance to talk about the military. If he would have talked more about the military, and right after that, if he would have pivoted into talking about the military for the rest of his, he would have done a lot better. I don't know why he didn't talk about the military. I do like. So here's the problem. So when he does all that military stuff, that Democrats can't push back by saying he's using these soldiers as props because they're using the soldiers as props.
Yes.
They can't push back and say, because they just gave him $80 billion more for, did you understand what's wrong with the Democratic Party and why you got to stop voting for them? Do you get this now? Because now the Democrats, they have no counter narrative to any of the stuff he said. Yeah. Because everyone at home is watching. If they've been watching lefty media, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, look, the African-American unemployment is down below that. Oh, my God, look how well we're doing. Oh, my, Chrysler's moving back to Michigan. I didn't know. So you're sitting, you know why? Because the Democrats haven't been talking about fucking anything. And why? Because they're bought by the same people. And the lefty media goes along with it. And if you're on the left and you go along with that, you're a fucking useful idiot. That's what that term was invented for. Go ahead, Ron.
It was nice that he had.
If you're on the left and you're in the media and you're going along with this, then you're a useful idiot. You're on a network that is on the left, that isn't in the media, and that the only thing they talk about is Donald Trump. And predominantly, Donald Trump. I'll put a link to the TYT's main page where you can look at their videos going back over the last few weeks. Donald Trump. That video that I said before where Uygur went with Clinton, I'm with her, that video, his Cenk Uygur's I'm with her video, that was my demarcation point. That was my Stalinism. That was my Stalingrad. That was the point where it was like, okay, I'm done with this particular conflict. I'm over with. Now, I want to say ADBC. So let's say the election itself, meaning this stuff ran on the spectrum of Hillary support going all the way up to the election itself, where TYT has a massive meltdown. I think Anna flips out. Some of the other hosts look like they're going to cry when Hillary loses. The woman on TYT Politics, I can't think of her name, she flipped out screaming and crying at the screen. The major meltdown. Now, Dore, after this, was attacked relentlessly because he was on this camp of Donald Trump is incompetent, is a fucking idiot, and he's not going to be as bad as you think he is. And whether he's going to be as bad as you think he is or not, if you want anything to change, you need to retool the party itself. And continuously being complicit, giving it these milquetoast, watered down people who are not in your best interest, these corporate robots, continuously voting these people in office is not the way to do it. If you want real substantive change, you need to make changes. You can't keep doing the same thing that you've always been doing. And there needs to be some pressure on the political apparatus if you want the party to change. I think Dore's right. I think Dore's right. I didn't want Donald Trump to win. I damn sure didn't want Hillary Clinton to win either. And even though I didn't want Donald Trump to win, it felt good that she lost. It felt good that she lost, if I'm being honest. The question here is, how do you resolve this? How do you resolve this conflict? So if you have Dore essentially saying lefty media are fucking idiots and useful idiots, and come on, we have to know that he's on a network of lefty media, and that lefty media is trying to get people into the Democratic Party and trying to get people to vote for Democrats using the thing of Justice Democrats. And for the most part, it's on this bandwagon of Trump and Russia, Donald Trump, all the time. He certainly knows. Certainly know he's talking about the main show. Not exclusively, no. I don't think that. But it's hard for me to believe that the indie media, the lefty media, is the Young Turks. I mean, that's just known as the Young Turks. He's on that network, so I would imagine that he full well understands that he's on the network. I don't think he's breathtakingly stupid, where he doesn't realize that he is on a lefty network, TYT. I suspect he understands. And when he's throwing this, I would imagine that they are also included in this. I don't know if this means that there's some kind of feud between Dore and TYT. Probably not. They probably vastly disagree, however, on this Trump stuff. Somebody who worked for TYT had a thread on YouTube. On Twitter. I asked this person if they wanted to be on the show. They declined being on the show, so I'll just show the thread. This came up. Reefer Madness. Preliminary effort, but if you think the news source should report the news instead of giggling over Trump's silliness, contact me. I have a plan to force them to talk about actual issues. It'll take a lot of us, but that's the basis of true activism. Now, this has to do with TYT, and it goes into this thing of, has TYT changed? How has TYT changed? Why has TYT changed? And even this kind of thing of people who watch them with this kind of sharp edge of dislike towards it. And why? And it doesn't come across as if it's hateful or angry or mean just for the sake of being mean, or they're trolls just for the sake of being trolls. It feels like certain people used to watch the network, that they liked the network. They liked having this idea of independent media and liked having them as a source. And somewhere along the way, that fell off. Whatever it was that they liked fell off. And this is not just a few people. I know a lot of people still like TYT, but there is a lot of people, for whatever reason, who dislike them with a passion. And this is what I'm exploring. There's a person who used to work at TYT, and they make a really good point that I want to talk about. And even goes with this idea a little bit on what Jimmy Dore is talking about, meaning potentially being banned from their main show. Let's take a look at, let's see. John Blackman. Yeah, I finally had to treat TYT exactly like I treat Fox, CNN, MSNBC. Do I think they're bad? Do I think they're as bad? No, but bad enough to put them on mute. I listen to some Democracy Now!, though I have to turn them off at times also. I like Loud and Clear with whistleblower John Kirikaku. I like John Kirikaku too also. Susan. The last 6 months has shown they simply don't give a fuck about feedback or constructive criticism. They've squandered our donations, wasted their platform, and chased off their progressive viewers. If you have an idea to wake them up, I'm all ears. These are not people who hate TYT. These are people who liked TYT and want whatever was back before they got to the point now. Let's keep going. Let's see. This is John Grisano. I can back this up. While I was at TYT, I begged them to listen to the members and involve them in production decisions. I had several tech initiatives that would make this happen, and all were ignored in favor of scams like the $2 million donation drive. Its investment, this would be, let's call him JG, John. It's talking about that Jen got from those guys, I think, the reason for TYT becoming more establishment. Now, they're trying to say that the money that TYT got from, not Buddy Romer, but the other gentleman, what is his name? I can't think of his name. But the $20 million donation. They're trying to make this case that in the same way that TYT's logic is, if you give money to a politician, that is somewhat of a bribe. The people who give money to the politician needs that money. And if that politician wants to get that money again to run, he needs to fall in line. Otherwise, that money will be used against him. Ultimately, the people lean in the direction of the people who are paying them. That's what's being said. If this applies to politicians, why wouldn't this apply to news shows? That's what they're asking. I mean, it's hard to say that these guys are wrong if the logic that TYT goes by is that on politicians. I don't see why TYT would be different. That's where this is coming from. Now, to be fair, that criticism, that's a tough one. Because any news show, any company is going to want to grow. That's just the basis of the system itself. The point becomes, does it influence? But it's unfair to say that they don't have a right to grow. Of course, TYT is going to want to grow and become more prosperous in the way that they grow. Does that growth automatically mean that corporate influence or influence by these people who are Democratic contributors will water down the coverage and the network itself? That's what they're asking. So both things can be true at the same time, because that's my point. So, person who worked there. Yeah, the things Cenk wants to happen to protest Trump was never willing to call as he watched the primaries being stolen. I've done a video on this too. Cenk Uygur comes out, we need to throw our bodies on the line. Our bodies need to be on the line. If they fire, what's his name? We need to put our bodies on the line. And it's like, but you weren't willing to do that when they were stealing the election from Sanders in real time. You weren't willing to do that. Not just not willing to do that. To make a video telling your subscribers to knuckle up, to bend your knee, to vote for Sanders, to vote for Clinton, to be on with her. With this caveat, kind of like Donna Brazile in her book. Here's all the corruption in regards to skating campaign finance laws. But my last sentence, after showing all of this corruption and illegal behavior, is to say that it wasn't illegal behavior. Here's my reason for voting for Hillary Clinton, but my vote is not support. Okay, let's keep going. It really isn't, but TYT has suffered from a colossal lack of vision from the executives. There is no planning or introspection, just panicked compliance with whatever Cenk's latest shiny object happens to be. Unfortunately, by taking the $20 million, Cenk has finally subjected himself to actual capitalism. This will not end well for TYT. The point that John JG is making, the one who used to work at TYT, is, look, you are stuck with the same rule set as politicians. If they need that money, the person who gave the money has influence. Just is what it is. You're being, somewhat of a bribe. How much of influence is always the question. How much impact does that $20 million give? That's what people don't know. But I don't think they're crazy facts in the question. By the same token, again, it's not crazy that TYT wants to grow. You can't necessarily gut them on that. Let me see. Now, what they were saying was the scam had to do with, let me see, the $2 million donation, Jeff. So what they're trying to say is the money that they got was supposed to be for a certain amount of journalists. Well, where are those journalists? They did the funding drive. They got the money. The journalists they're no longer there. So the change in TYT management was immediate. All of a sudden, complaining about your supervisors became a firing offense. Jimmy was basically banned from the main show, and support for anything but breaking news that would be picked up by CNN was dropped. No more Flint. He's saying that while he was there at the show, changed drastically. Now, when I heard this, I looked up their show. I was curious about, is that true? And I wanted to see some of the things that they were showing for the week. So this is Trump. Okay, here's one. How DCC props up corporate Democrats. Racists will make your skin crawl. That's great. Racism, Trump. Of course, those goes hand in hand. Trump. Missing person shows up on The Bachelor. That's nothing. DuPont is destroying lives in Ohio. I don't know which one that's from. Oh, right. Okay, there we go. There's more Trump stuff. Attack on Republicans. Fox News. Father charges child. Again, that's nothing in regards to politics. Trump. Nunez memo. Trump. Or Republicans and Trump. You get my point. Oh, here's one. Democrats suck up. That's Manchin. My question still remains. Will they vote for Manchin or tell the subscribers to vote for Manchin if Paula Swearengin loses? If Manchin is running against a Democrat, does TYT take a position on that race? I'm curious. More Trump. Democrats bungle the release of a memo. I don't know what that one is. That's Democrats. Stormy Daniels, that's Trump. ICE raids, Trump. Anti-Trump agent has history. Oh, wait, Hillary history. Okay, here's one. Trump. Police scandal. Yeah, that was a big one. You get my point. You get a lot of Donald Trump, a lot of Republicans, very little on Democrats. And the point that the guy made was, where is it? Basically, the main show and support for anything of breaking news that would be picked up by CNN. He's trying to make the point that, look, what the show used to be, this kind of ferocious lefty thing that went after, I guess, Democrats and Republicans. I'm imagining there had to been some change in the show for people to be pissed off. It's been watered down. At this point, they're associated with corporate interests. That stuff has some kind of impact. And for whatever reason, I don't necessarily know the reason right off the bat. I don't know if that $20 million had an impact in that sense. But whatever the reason, people have suspected or people are seeing a fundamental change in the show. And they dislike that change in the show. And if this is true, where Dore has been somewhat pushed to the side because for the most part, Dore is not playing ball with this whole Russiagate thing, that Dore for the most part is like, look, I'm not buying the Russiagate thing. I don't believe it, and I'm not necessarily going to go on this bandwagon that everything I do is going to be about Donald Trump. That for the most part, he's been shunned. That shunning is also shunning a bunch of other lefties. There's a lot of lefties that don't like this, and I don't know what takes place on the main show. I don't have that edge on me, and probably because I don't watch it, so I don't have that edge because I don't necessarily engage in watching it. But when I delve into my own feelings about it, all things being equal, I would rather have a lefty network, if I'm being honest. But these people are crazy. They're problems. They're problems. There's something fundamentally wrong if the only thing your show is doing is the majority of just bashing Trump. If you want to really get something accomplished, if the only thing in the majority that your show is doing bashing Trump, it's problematic. It's problematic. I'm going to put the question out this way. I suspect that the reason why people have this edge about it is because ultimately they would prefer to have something that they themselves consider to be this kind of lefty media, a network that represented their interests. I think all things being equal, people would like it. I think the reason why they're pissed off is because it's something that they don't think they have. It's something that they felt that they may have had at one point, but it's gone so far into the weeds that they are no longer associated with that particular thing. And I suspect it annoys and pisses them off, which is why people have such a hard edge for it. I don't think you can have a hard, dislike of something unless at some point there was something in you that had some feelings for it, particularly if you're talking about from the left. My question is this: how do you fix it? Can it be fixed? And what is the main thing that gets into you or digs into you of TYT while you have this thing of, I really dislike this. I really can't stand to watch this. I don't want to have anything to do with this. Or these guys are like CNN or MSNBC, just an NBC light, that type of stuff. What is it? I've told you what I think it is. I think it's because they've watered down their show. I think beyond watering down their show, I think they've taken a particular tact with regards to what they're going to espouse. And that exposure is more so about Donald Trump and more so what I consider the Democratic line in regards to politics, with the sprinkling here or there of something that Democrats have done or some kind of failure of Democrats. The majority of it is MSNBC light. That's what I think it is. That's my personal belief in what I think it is, based on just looking at the last week of shows and hearing what people complain about. The complaints seem to fall in line with the content. So I am now going to open it. I know this was a magnificently long, fall in of sorts, but explain to me, what is it with TYT that gets into your grill, that bugs you? For that matter, what is it about TYT if you don't believe this, if you think that this is a wrong thing, if you think I'm completely wrong on this? What is it that you like, and what is it that I say was somewhat wrong? Give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts. Oh, wow, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of people here. All right. So I'm going to start up top. Buster Peak 21. They were terrified because they didn't like Trump. That's true. If it was substantive, they would have been upset. They wouldn't have been upset. Yeah, they were terrified of Donald Trump. You're trying to say if it was like a McCain. If it was John McCain, I think they would have did the same thing. Like, I think the magnified, or Trump was magnified because of how gross he was. But if it was Ted Cruz, if it was, like, which Republican would have ran, would TYT wouldn't have behaved in the same way? I mean, come on. It's just the fact that there's this monster across from the fort, abort. They would have did the same thing. There was no point that I'm aware of that TYT would have said, not vote or vote for a third party. They would have always went with the Democrat. You must understand, some of this stuff is relative. Donald Trump is a monster, particularly if you're looking at it from the standpoint of, oh my God, that guy could be president of the United States. But all these guys were monsters. He's just so happened was a worse monster. Now, yes, it stretched the rim a little bit, having Donald Trump in. But whoever they would have chose would have been a monster. TRT would have had the same reaction. It had the same reaction. It was like, oh my God, this guy's a monster. Jenny Lynn, honest observers have been critiquing TYT for years for pushing lesser evil voting, among many of the counterproductive and disingenuous things. Fair enough. Wrap around. No, I like passionate argument, Jamal. Huh? What do you mean? Ben Mankiewicz is an illiberal. Yeah, man. Ben was, I thought he was, look, at a certain point, what's his name? Jimmy Dore flipping out, it was a little much. He was a little over the top. but Ben's approach to it, like I can understand why Dore was getting pissed about it. I was getting annoyed watching Ben make that argument, if that makes sense. Like he's taking this indignant position, like, you know, it is unthinkable that anybody would just go into this contest and not vote for Hillary Clinton. Fuck are you? Who the fuck are you? So yeah, I understood where Jimmy Dore was coming from. It felt like Ben was talking down. It felt like he was taking this approach of being better than, and you need to fall in line, and how dare you vote for anybody other than Hillary Clinton. Yeah, Jimmy Dore was pissed off. I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Now, I mean, at the point where he looked like he's going to hit him in the eye, then a little much. It's a little much. But yeah. Christian Hall, TYT is an echo chamber, and they never challenged the entire system outside the paradigm they've becoming MSNBC. It does look that way, doesn't it? It just seems like it's MSNBC light. I looked at their channel. I was shocked. I was like, holy shit. They're just on Trump and Russia. Like all of the content. And you think of all the things that take place in the world, all of the problems, all of the heartaches, all of the good stuff, all of the things that you can bear your attention upon. And the majority of it is Trump and Russia. You can understand that if I don't think Trump and Russia is the most important thing in the world, that I may lose thread with your content. You can understand that. You can understand if you're saying that the election wasn't rigged, I'm probably going to lose a little thread of the content. Not to mention I'm going to lose a little bit of respect for you at that point. Or if you're challenging what the definition of rigged is and all this other stuff. Yeah, I lose a little respect. When you have this conversation about the DNC fraud thing, you're like, oh, those people need to get over it. Or John saying something derisive like, you know, how dare, you know, I can't believe these people are believing that this was fraud, that cheating a candidate and lying, that this process was honest and legit, and somehow these people are crazy for doing that. I was like, who the fuck are you? Yeah, I can lose a thread with your content when you're behaving in that way, because I think you're wrong. I think you're fundamentally wrong on all that stuff. So, yeah, I can see how people are being disenchanted by that. I can see it. I don't think those people are crazy. Jimmy Dore is done with him. I expect excerpts, aggressive progressives. Jimmy doesn't need TYT. I don't think he needs them now, no. But I do understand him feeling some level of loyalty to him and getting him started. So, yeah, I don't think he's crazy on that. Elephant on Coke. Jimmy Dore needs to link up with a business-savvy person to start new things with other more like-minded individuals. Maybe. I mean, I don't think him being on TYT hurts him. It would hurt him if he changed in some way. Like if like he flipped on a dime. But Jimmy Dore is Jimmy Dore. I don't think him being on TYT hurts him in the least. Copter Force. Well, I guess I don't see it. I don't care, though. I'm not one of those that thinks if he stays, he's some kind of sellout or whatever. Yeah, Copter Force, agreed. I don't think so either. It's like, I've heard people say, like, Jimmy Dore should leave. Why? Like, what's pushing him out the door? I don't see anything pushing him out the door. Even if they don't allow him on his main shows. So what? What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Doesn't make him some kind of quote-unquote sellout because Jimmy Dore stays on TYT. He's his own thing. Yeah, agree, Copter. Absolutely agree. Let's see. Oh, he said, fuck it, and his own State of the Union coverage with almost 40,000 viewers on video. Well, look, I respect his honesty. If Jimmy, one of the reasons I like being siloed, I like having my own little, you know, this is my space of sorts. I'm God of the space. And not having these like attachments and all this other stuff. Because I say whatever the fuck I want. If Dore was in some way inhibited in saying whatever he wanted, that would be a problem. There would be a problem. What I imagine, though, is he probably does get sick of the shit that goes on in the main show. He probably gets sick of people commenting to him about shit that goes on in the main show. I would imagine he gets a little fed up and annoyed. And yeah, he's going to say things like, you know, you're useful idiots if you're propping this establishment up. Yeah, yeah. Of course, everybody knows what he means. He's spot on. That's right, Jenny. He's absolutely spot on. Dark days. Gee, I'd be ashamed if some democraticalized the right. Can't see how that could happen to cholesterol Caligula. Democraticalize the right. you do radicalize the right, but not in the way that people think. Like, so say, for instance, you move to the left. Your shift to the left could do one or two things. It could make people on the right more batshit crazy. But if you're pulling the public with you, if you get the majority of the public to go along with you, you're not radicalizing them. If anything, you're dragging the right to you. Democrats moving to the right, to some degree, in a weird way, radicalizes the right because it just pushes them further to the right. It's not a situation where you move to the right and they just say, oh, you're taking the heritage plan for your health care. Well, thank you. I'm glad that we agree on a market-based solution to health care that doesn't really work. No, they move further to the right and they attack their own plan. Oh, this is socialism. The plan that we as Republicans came up with is complete socialism. You guys are communists. That's what they do. It's their fucking plan. They're bitching at their market-driven solution to healthcare that doesn't work. That's what they're bitching about and trying to override. Your moving to the right is naive as can be, thinking that the Republicans are all of a sudden just going to agree with you. They move further to the right. Thank you for agreeing with us. We want more. Thank you for agreeing with us. We want more. Do you realize that during FDR days, Republicans had to bite the bullet and had to accept that this is the way things are, that the New Deal is the way things are. It's here to stay. And even Republicans, like Eisenhower, raised income taxes to like 90%. A Republican saying, if you're not on board with the New Deal, you're not an American. That's where they were, because that's where they had to be. The batshit craziness that you see was something that happened slowly over time as the country moved further and further and further and further and further to the right. You get normalized to it because you look at it from the standpoint of one election cycle or two election cycles, not over the course of 20, 30, 40 years. You've moved to the right. And as you move to the right, the Republicans just continuously want more and more and more. It's an existential struggle. It's not something that you just win. But this functions in a spectrum. The further to the right you move, the further to the right the spectrum allows. You need to move it to the left. And you need to have some kind of stop in this process of allowing Democrats to continuously move to the left, to the right, and normalize the processes that are in place. You need to stop it. You need to stop it. Now, to have a network that was supposed to be a lefty network that people wanted a champion in this, to turn around and say, okay, we got to vote this way. Bend your knee. Kneel, and be with her. And if you don't kneel to be with her, you're crazy. And we're going to talk about Russia and Trump all the time. It's going to be Trump all the time because Trump is horrible and terrifying, and we're terrified of him. And we need you to vote for Democrats. And we need you to fall in line for Democrats. And it's like, come on, man. Come on. Are you shilling for the party, or are you representing the people who are supporting you and giving you money? Just come on. I'm talking about your viewers at this point. With your viewers. Buster Peak, oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Guys, I appreciate your super cash. I'm trying to pay more attention to this. And people who donate. And definitely, guys, if you do super cash, write something. Make it interesting. What is something that you want to tell the crowd, that you want to get across to the number of people who are here? Let's see. But Buster Peak, thank you. I appreciate it, man. Your help with the show. Let's see. Who else? The Young Turks are obviously taking their Haitian earthquake relief dollars pocketed by Mr. Slick Willie. Oh, you're trying to say they're paid off. I don't know if they're paid off. Kucinich is running for governor of Ohio, rap brand engineer. And yes. Fucking yes. Fucking Kucinich. They edged him out of his seat. So I honestly hope he's able to get governor. He has my full-throated support. What talent did Jimmy lose? I don't know anything about that. Yeah, I don't know if he lost any talent. Jake Smith, Kucinich will win. He just got a late start. I got about 90 signatures to get him on the ballot. Jake Smith. Good job, Jake Smith. Yeah, I like Dennis Kucinich. Underdog 47. I vow never to vote for a corporate-sponsored candidate no matter what party they happen to belong to. Fucking A. Look, that's where you need to be. For all of those people who in the camp of wanting to save the Democratic Party, that's where you need to be. You vote for people who represent your interests. The party must understand that if they don't represent your interests, that they will fail and that they will lose. That is the only man against the door that you have. That's the only guy that knocks. Either your party is scared of you or you're scared of your party. In this case, you run to Democrats hoping that they save you from the Republicans. You give Democrats a free pass by being terrified of them. They need to be terrified of you. At the end of the day, what you have at your disposal is you are not getting my support if you don't represent my interests. And I have a very baseline interest that you need to represent in order to get your vote. Unless there is a fundamental level of integrity that you're willing to hold the line on, nothing changes. That's the bare bones truth of it. Nothing changes. The 1,100 seats that they lost, losing the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, losing it all, losing the presidency, that was the thing that got you your Unity Commission. They were terrified that the party would go, the way of the Whigs. So they came up with the Unity Commission. The problem with this is that was a dog and pony show. That the moment that polls started going their way, that said, we don't have to change, we don't have to update, we don't have to do squat. We don't even have to talk about how we lost this much throughout the United States. The people will come back to us because of Donald Trump. And if in 2018 they win the House and the Senate, Unity Commission goes away, nobody cares anymore because they were able to get reelected without changing anything. Your stick, the thing that you hold, the club, the man at the door, must be a large number of people pulling themselves out of the political process, understanding that they are willing to vote for people only when they represent their interests, and having that to be understood, allowed, understood, under like complete understanding of we have nothing to do with this. We are no longer complicit in what you guys are doing. You're alcoholics, you're drug addicts, you're stuck on the tit of donors, your knees are immensely dirty. We want no part of this process. We're leaving. We're leaving. You live or you die, but you're going to do that on your own bed, going through your own convulsions. We're leaving. We're no longer enablers. That's what you need to be. That's your strategy. You can't just depend and hope that Bernie Sanders wins. That has to be your strategy of holding people accountable. And accountable, mind you, for those people who are in the Dementer camp, there's no such thing as accountability if your goal is to vote for a Democrat, regardless of the situation. Accountability doesn't exist in that model. It's being willing to leave. It's being willing to leave. So yes. Don't support any troops unless you're invaded by Russia. Then support the Russian troops. Iki boxing. That's funny. Jim Hayden. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Thank you a lot. Look, man, I'm blown away that you guys do this, and I appreciate this. And it helps a lot, particularly in regards to the content and association with the time that's put into it. It's appreciated. It really is. Thank you, Jim. Jim Hayden. He didn't leave a comment, but I will read. Okay, I read this comment. Jim Hayden. Hillary's own corrupt Democrat Party is not the Democratic Party that we once knew. Jim Hayden. Fucking A. And it's hard to get that through people's heads. It is hard to get that through people's heads. I showed the speech with John F. Kennedy. And Kennedy, I look at these things in epic terms. My wife jokes me when I talk about this stuff, and like I romanticize the way these things take place. But John F. Kennedy, just a man, he puts his pants on, he puts his underwear on, he takes dumps just like everybody else. But he's just a man. And this man, this ape, is at a podium with fire and fury, screaming that we're going to the goddamn moon. We're going to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. This will show the best of us, essentially the best of our talents and abilities in putting against this particular task. Fucking amazing speech. That is an amazing speech. Like, to have a man not having the technical capabilities at that moment to do so, but organizing America itself and positioning itself, we're going to the goddamn moon. We've looked at that thing for centuries since man has been here. Fucking going, and went to the goddamn moon, put boot prints in the goddamn moon. That's an amazing thing. John F. Kennedy, that's his speech. Ted Kennedy giving the speech on raising the minimum wage, and with fire and fury, losing his shit, Like, what more greed do you want from these peers? What do you require? Like, yelling into the microphone because Republicans are blocking a $2 increase. Kennedys, not saying they were perfect. Not saying they were perfect in the least. John F. Kennedy nearly got us into a goddamn nuclear war. But in this very limited capacity, in this very specific context, we're going to the goddamn moon. You have one man who's organizing this country into taking itself out of space, putting the goals and ideas higher than just these terrestrial matters. That is an amazing thing for humanity to organize itself around. Something up there, something outside of ourselves. And I understand that this wasn't this kind of purely humanitarian thing. This was somewhat of a space race with regards to militaristic aims. Even in the speech, he's coding it with a certain amount of propaganda of, you know, this is freedom, this is liberty, and everything else, and America needs to get there first in order for it to be a free. Yeah, I get it, it's propaganda. But still, he's going to the goddamn moon. I'm trying to get across how epic that is. Yuckmouth, Joe Yuckmouth. He's also supposed to be a Kennedy. I need to see his birth certificate. But he's supposed to be a Kennedy. I need to see his long form. But the speech that he gave was embarrassing. Had crust around his mouth, and he's giving the speech like he still had breast milk, like he just came from, you know, doing something pretty nasty. It's not nasty, it's just different. But still, either way, he should have wiped his mouth. With all the money he has, he should have paid somebody to tell him to wipe his mouth before he did that speech. And it was platitudes, corporate-driven platitudes, nothingness, emptiness, confined in the husk of a suit of a Kennedy. Sad. It was profoundly sad to see what has happened to the Kennedy name. Yeah. That is not the same party. That's my point. Yes, Jim, I agree. I absolutely agree. Let's see. Oh, wow. Those are further at the top. I didn't realize I had this many people here. Let's see. To most young, I wondered what that was. Let me see. It hurts Jimmy cred as well. Copter Force. Jamal should be on Jimmy Dore's panel. That would be cool for those live shows. He doesn't know I exist, Copter Force. He doesn't know I exist. You need to know something's there before you can bring it on. Winky Burnable. I think most people that sub to Jamal are subbed to Jimmy. Maybe. I mean, I guess our shows are similar. Jimmy, it's funny as all hell, so there's that. There's been stuff that I disagree with Dore on, but I think it's overarching points. But look, comedians tend to have a critical eye on this stuff. Like, they tend to be good at showing kind of the comical ridiculousness of something, like getting it across in this kind of stinging way where it goes beyond the words that they're saying. Like, it goes into almost a context of something. Like, I get an example. Like jokes do this really well, where you're getting across the human condition in a way without saying it specifically. I'm not giving you those specific words because I can't give you the specific words to get across the experience. But I can give you an image and a picture that gets across the experience far better than the words can get across. It's that type of stuff. Comedians do that really, really well. So, like, let's say a woman, and Slash Exact uses this one. You go on a date, and you walk the woman to her house. You're being a gentleman. And she says, hey, would you like to come up for coffee? And you say, well, I don't really drink coffee. And she says, good, because I don't have any coffee. Now, it is very clear what's being said here. I want you to come up because I want to have sex. I want your penis in my vagina. Or I want something else to take place. But you understand it. You get it across. It's sexually charged. But you haven't said anything sexual in the least. But you get across everything. It's explainable right off the bat. She's not bringing you up to bleak tiddlywinks. The woman has said, would you like to have coffee? She just lied to you to try to get you up, and she exposed the fact that she lied to you. And the exposure of the fact gets across that she wants something specific. Being a man and a woman, being human beings, you know what that something specific is. The joke itself gets it across in this kind of visceral way than just saying she wants him to come up for sex. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. It's just jokes gets the stuff across in this stinging, visceral way that is amazing. And Jimmy Dore has a great way of doing it. I like him. Yeah, I like it. Let's see. Akdale Chomsky. Same principles with voting as in supporting media outlets. They push here is ultimately to threaten to pull system. Well, okay, let me say that again. Same principle with voting as in supporting media outlets. They push here. Oh, the push here is ultimately to threaten to pull support if they don't represent your interests. Yes. I don't like this, so yes, I'm not supporting this. And being straightforward about it. I don't like this, and so I am not supporting this. That makes all the sense in the world. Why would you support something that you don't particularly like? Am I paying the gardener if the gardener is not doing the gardening? Am I paying the garbage man if the garbage man is not taking out the trash? Am I paying the politicians with my vote, meaning in the political space? Am I giving them my vote if what they're doing is not in my best interest? And what happens when year after year after year after year I'm giving somebody my vote that's not in my best interest? At which point do I get them to turn to be in my best interest? At which point? At which point, after me complicit overly, over and over again, giving them my vote in this, at which point does it change? Now, Uygur thinks activism changes this. But activism to what end? You understand that at the end of the day, this boils down to, are you going to vote for them or not? And ultimately, if that activism, at the end of that activism, you have a monster at the other end, what are you going to do? Are you going to vote for them or not? They're not afraid of you. They're not afraid of you because at the end of the day, they know they're going to get your vote. As long as they're a monster at the other end, they know Cenk Uygur is going to get on his show and say, please vote for this random Democrat. That's my point. Let's see. Defrauding their audiences is not representing our interests. Garnum, exactly, Dale. You and I watched their scams in real time. Those are scams in real time. What was it where they did something and then they asked for money immediately after, and it's like, oh, bad timing, too soon, too soon. Somewhat Jordan. It was like, yeah, we're firing Jordan for rape or something, or for them saying that you raped that woman, but for them saying it, and then it's like, yeah, if you want to support TYT, you give us cash, or getting their mails that sound so much like the Democratic Party mailings, where there was like, Donald Trump said this, give us cash, give us money. And then TYT sends their stuff, so-and-so is doing this, and we need to do this, and help us by doing this, and give us cash. Look, the thing that the guy who worked there was talking about was the newsroom thing, the reporters. It's like, we need to raise $2 million to get X amount of reporters. And then you end up firing one, and the other one never shows up, and you don't have those reporters. Or you have like 2 of the 4, something to that effect. I think that's what he was talking about in regards to reporters. BB Hammer, Jenny Land, me. I listen to Sybil and anybody who has credibility with facts and evidence. I think for myself, you should try it too. No fighting. J. Scott, Sybil Edwards tell me how to think about gateways. She tells you how to think about gateways. Marco Segura. They get rid of him 2 hours after Huffington Post report. Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Yeah. Huffington Post comes out with a bombshell saying Jordan raped somebody. A few hours later, Huffington Post takes that thing down. They made some claims in that were somewhat unsubstantiated. And when you actually heard the woman herself report it, you're like, oh, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound right. Garnome, scams goes back years, Jamal. Scams goes back years. But you know, it didn't hit until recently, though. I mean, that's when it started to land, where I started hearing a lot more people saying, oh my God, we don't like this network has changed. And the scams that I saw, there's a good point to say that, you know, we need X number of reporters. They did hire Nomi Kantz. They did hire, well, of course they had Jordan. I thought they hired, what's that other cat that does black studies? Oh, I can't think of his name. I thought they hired him, but I haven't seen him in God knows how long. So, yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I think Abby still has credibility. Yeah, I like Abby. Being associated with TYT doesn't help, though. I like Abby more. I like Abby. Abby is ferocious. Yeah, I like Abby. I totally like Abby. See what Hillary has wrought with her grand design with the USA Homeless Lives Matter. Mike Tracy. Vinamy. Mike Tracy is interesting. Mike Tracy is interesting. So Mike Tracy didn't seem to go along with the Russian narrative at all. And Uygur put a knife in him at one point. Like, because he wasn't going along with the Russian narrative. Yet, fucking amazing. Now, Mike Tracy has slightly got on my nerves because when he had the conversation with the guy from the Zeitgeist films. I can't think of his name. Peter Joseph. And the only thing he wanted to talk about was 9/11. Like, that annoyed the shit out of me. Like, you're sitting there with Peter Joseph, and he has this book, the entirety of the book, stocked with facts and information and a point of view and a perspective. And he didn't challenge anything in the book. The book was straightforward. He went to that. He went to something that happened like 10 years ago, and that's the thing he wanted to have a conversation about. It's fucking amazing. It's fucking amazing. Timothy Young. Michael Tracy got straight by Jenks. Pretty sad. Jamal and others, you don't listen to the show, Rap Brand. I haven't seen the show. I mean, gotta be honest, I don't. The last time I watch, every so often there may be something specific, like some title or something that brings me in. It's few and far between. I gotta be honest, the Russia thing turned me off. The voting for Hillary Clinton turned me off. And like I said, I'm not one of those people who's like, one thing happened and I'm done. That was emotionally charged. And yeah, that was emotionally charged for me. So yeah, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. It wasn't the one thing, but definitely the Trump-Russia thing I'm not on board with. I find Abby switching to Hillary love to be very unlikely as well. There is no way. I've heard the argument between Abby Martin and Peter J, on Real News. There is no way that woman is switching to Hillary Clinton. She went at Paul J with that particular point of how voting for the lesser evil is, fruitless and everything else. Abby Martin was giving speeches for the Venus Project. So that gives you this idea of where Abby Martin is. There's no way. I love Abby Martin. She's awesome. She's absolutely awesome. Jacqueline Thompson, Garnome, truly enlightened figured that out being before the convention when Jenks started pushing Hillary as our only option against Trump because Bernie was going to lose. Yeah. Like, that's, again, I think that's where a lot of us were like, check, please. We're done. Check, please. We are done. Creative experiments. I love Democracy at Work, too. Democracy at Work is good. I like Richard Wolff. But they come out of videos a few times a month. Yeah, Richard Wolff does a monthly thing at a church. I forget what's the name of the church in New York. Love Richard Wolff. Love the guy. He has multiple segments also on Democracy at Work where they break that stuff up. He has like Richard flies, some like these little videos that he does. Richard Wolff is great. I try to watch TYT on occasion. I last about 10 minutes. I watch clips on occasion. The Garno. Jacqueline Thompson, thanks for turning me on to the Venus Project. I checked it out after your video. Jacqueline, the Venus Project is badass. Jack Fresco, he has a channel. The Venus Project has a channel. He has an interesting perspective of things. Let me say it that way. And you make your own judgments about whether or not he's right or wrong. Pull yourself out the current context and realize that the current context that you're ensconced in, gives you a certain view of the world. But I would say give him a fair hearing. He's an interesting guy. He's damn interesting. BB Hammer needs more hugs. Everybody needs more hugs. Timothy Young, JT, what do you think of Judicial Watch? So Judicial Watch has a bias associated with them, meaning they have a hard on against Hillary and Democrats and stuff. They're a right-wing agency. That doesn't mean that everything they put out is wrong. You float in perspectives. You float through filters. If that makes sense. It's like, these are wavelengths that these guys are on. Judicial Watch has a particular wavelength that people aggregate around, providing that they're on that particular wavelength. MSNBC, CNN, when people talk, the things that they say, how they say those things are almost like wavelengths that you gravitate into and out of. You choose a filter that gets you the information or the best filter that you need for a particular problem. From a Judicial Watcher's standpoint, they're right-wing. It's almost like you have to give them the benefit of the doubt requires you slipping into their filter, if that makes sense. Like if you're watching Fox News, it is difficult to listen to Fox News. It is difficult to listen to Donald Trump for any length of time. I'm just saying from my perspective. You almost have to slip into a perspective where you give it some level of credibility to even be able to listen to it and endure it. That's what I mean about that filter. Judicial Watch tends to be right-wing leaning. For me to give them the benefit of the doubt, there's certain things where they may say, well, I'm like, okay, I think this is true because this is just based on information, and this information is what it is. Either it's true or false. Other stuff, they have a hard-on for Hillary Clinton. Let me say it that way. They have a very hard-on for Hillary Clinton. It's like, it was like there was this woman who was holding a sign saying, don't vote for Obama because of gay marriage. And, she was walking around with the sign outside. She's a Bible thumper.
And to my wife's chagrin, I stopped the car because I wanted to talk to this woman. And I was like, so explain to me, why are you out here with this particular sign? And this is what I mean with Judicial Watch. Why this particular sign? And their sign being Hillary Clinton needs to go to jail and everything else. I understand that. But why is that your only thing? If you're being honest with the world, why is that your hard on? Why is that your only thing? Are these all the problems? And she's like, gay marriage. And I'm like, okay. But what about other stuff? Jesus didn't like income inequality. I mean, he didn't like this idea of people being dirt poor while other people had magnificent amounts of wealth. How are you choosing one over the other? How are you making that choice? Is there any level of priority over choices? I'm curious about this. Even this thing of, you know, did God make people purely for the sake of going to hell? You know, if you're right, and you have this God that created this person, didn't God make that person? Even if you say that person has some level of free will, did God know that he was going to put that person on this earth and that that person was going to be a particular way? Did God not know that that guy was going to be a homosexual or gay? If you're telling me that God knew, and this requires God to know for him to be God and for you to be right about your God, God put somebody on this planet purely for the sake of burning in hell. That's a fucked up God. She doesn't like these questions. But these are questions that need to be answered. If you're telling me that this is so important that you need to be outside holding the sign, and of all the things that God and the Bible teaches and the Bible hates and the Bible dislikes, a camel has a better chance of going through the head of a needle than a rich man and going to heaven? That seems like a pretty big fucking deal to make that particular statement. Where's your sign about that? I'm curious about that. Like, I want to know how she creates this priority. She didn't like these questions. I can understand why she didn't like these questions. Judicial Watch is kind of the same way to me. They have that one Bible thumping thing, and it's the thing that they continuously do. That doesn't mean that they're not going to get good information sometimes. There are times where they get probably fucking awesome information. But being aware of the bias helps. Being aware of the bias helps. So, I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Zav Ox. Irks in reality is a giant lost experiment and we're all in purgatory. Wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked. The problem of it is, this experiment is purely dependent upon us. That's all. It's just us. It's our choice. This can change tomorrow. It's just us. If everybody in the United States, if 70%, 60% woke up tomorrow and said, you know what? Certain things are just unacceptable. We're just not going to accept this as human beings. The world will change automatically. Just the very thought, the very idea of what it means to be human and the level that they're willing to exist as human beings. Those are the things that affect your natural world, because those are the things in which we direct ourselves and direct our energies around. It's us. We're the problem. It's an aggregation of all the likes, dislikes, and the things that we accept. That's us. What I will tell you is continuing status quo in no way is going to change the way things are. Hillary Clinton losing was a magnificent opportunity. Whether that opportunity is taken advantage of or not is a second question. But for lefties, it is a magnificent opportunity. It's a magnificent opportunity. So I know Jamal, and I can't wait no more. Wake up. I feel you, man. I feel you. Jenny, what does that even mean, BP? Who was even talking about left-right paradigm? We were talking about Abby being a gatekeeper. What did BB Hammer say? Whenever I want to see people triggered, I go to Jamal's chat. Who's me? I don't see anybody triggered. Jack, we're simply choosing what reality we want to resonate ourselves onto. Yes, Finamy, yes, agreed. Bible is an excuse to be bigots. You know, the funny part about it is, it's like, I always used to, there was a woman I was talking to at one time. Her and I were messing around. And this was way before my wife, so this is not a, Sunny Daniels type thing. But we were going in the car one day. We were going to the beach, Virginia Beach, and I never forget it. Somehow this conversation about gays, like gay, straight, lesbian, etc. comes up. And she says something to the effect of, yeah, God doesn't like that. And I feel iffy about that. And for 15 minutes, you talking about triggered. Like, because I'm shocked by this. That's the first point. Like, oh my God, I'm here with a bigot. I had sex with a bigot. That type of thing. And her and I are having this conversation.
And come to find out, her kid ends up being gay. I was like, yes, I love that. Now, the reason I love that is because it brings that into focus. It's easy for you to hate somebody at a distance, but this is your fucking kid. You know this kid. You grew up with this kid. You understand the likes, the dislikes, the empathy, all this stuff with this particular kid. Now you're dealing with your own biases and your bigotry from the standpoint of your kid. And guess what? She loves her kid. That bigotry and bias vanished overnight. It's easy to do this shit to somebody else who you don't necessarily know. To them, once that becomes real and personal, oh, this person is a person. This person is a person. Who knew? Who knew? Yeah, they always use this argument of, well, it's not me that dislikes you. It's God. God out in space. The God of the universe hates you and dislikes what you are. So I'm just piggybacking on what God did. This is not me hating you. I'm sorry. It's like bullshit. BS. Totally BS. Yeah, you can't use some unreal instrument as your hatred and bigotry. Own it. Own it. Don't put up God. Own it. Yeah. I would criticize anybody. People on the right get upset when I criticize Dr. Jerome Corsi. BB's head like, fuck it, I'll criticize anybody. Right on, BB. Mark Segura. I found a long article by dailyhaze.com. It's complicated. J. Scott, I think people get upset when you cause... I think people get upset with you because you're annoying. But that's that too. It's like you're not triggered because you're saying something profound. It's more so triggered because you're being annoyed by the person. There's a difference. There's a difference in those things. Garnome, I've dated bigots, no hardcore bigots, but still, it's weird. Like, it shocked me. Like, it's like, I've had sex with this woman. It's like, what the fuck? I have my penis in you, and now you're telling me the stuff that I kind of wish I would have known beforehand. Yeah, it shocked the shit out of me. It shocked the shit out of me. It's like, you're driving like, what? The fuck, what? When did this happen? You never told me this. It was one of those things. One of those things. I was like shocked. As a recovering Democrat, I was also bigot calling red states full of white trash racists. I now know that it's not true. I've hung out with people in red states. No problem. Creative experiments. Yeah, that's the wild part. I've hung out with people or knew people who voted for Trump who said, well, it was Trump's turn. Democrats failed. It was Trump's turn. And me as an African American is like, but you understand he's a fucking racist, right? Like, and this is not me. I don't, oftentimes, if you watch my channel, I don't have a habit of calling people racist. I tend to give the benefit of the doubt overwhelmingly. You know, bending over backwards to give the benefit of the doubt. Because I feel like the moment that you call somebody racist, you kind of fuck up the conversation. That person may be, yeah, if I'm being honest, from my internal caliber or my internal, Geiger, yeah. But sometimes if you're having a substantive conversation with somebody, you got to give a certain amount of latitude and be, let the person say what they have to say to speak their piece. Otherwise, there can never be a meeting of the minds for a person to feel like they're being attacked for each and everything that they do. But, my Geiger counter goes a particular way. My racist counter, if you want to call it. And I understand that this stuff is subjective, meaning there's levels of subjectivity to it. But at a certain point, if it doesn't become subjective, when you start your campaign off saying that Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers and that you assume a few are nice people, you've castigated an entire country. Like, this isn't, it's like shit, man. Like, for people who's like, oh, no, he's not racist, you have just told me that you think the majority of the people in an entire fucking country are rapists and drug dealers. You can understand that's problematic to me. You can understand that I don't know the basis of your logic to get to that point, making me think that, yeah, you're probably racist. You're probably racist. I don't use that for everybody. Yes, in the case of Trump, I use it for Trump. I've met people who were Trump supporters who were no way racist. They might have been racially insensitive, meaning from the standpoint of voting for Trump and all this other stuff. But many would say, look, I don't think Trump believes that stuff. And so, yes, I'm putting Trump in office. He says something about economics. Or I want to punish Democrats, so I'm voting for Donald Trump. There's all sorts of reasons that people ended up voting for Trump. Not all of them were racist. Democrats, using identity, use this thing of, if we can call them racist and sexist and homophobic and everything else, then we can pick a headwind and voting for Republicans and Donald Trump. We can control the narrative. It's like saying people who talk about UFOs are crazy. You can create a headwind in that particular conversation and shut that conversation up in media and everything else. Same tactic. Same tactic. We're the party of identity, so everybody else is racist and sexist. Yes! We can get everybody's vote by making them scared to vote Republicans. This is everything about the Democrats on this front. But they don't never really say anything about actual stuff, which is why they lost. When they did a review of what was talked about in the campaign, the overwhelming majority of Clinton's ads were against Trump. Not economics, not real world scenarios of things that affect people. It would hate ads against Trump. Trump at least had some ads talking about the economy and make America great. Yes, it's veiled racism, but at the very least, those people can look at it and say, maybe he's talking about the economy. He at least was hopping around the country willing to bash companies to no end, no. But at the very least, he had the optics of willing to do it as a showman. You can understand that's more than people have seen in a very long time. So yeah, people wanted something else. Doesn't mean all of them were racist and sexist and homophobic. You might could say, well, they were somewhat insensitive because they voted for Donald Trump and they didn't necessarily care about my welfare. Okay, that might be fair. That might be fair. But yeah, she lost on her own merits. The entire political discourse in both parties right now is xenophobia, whether it's Russiagate or immigrants. Dale Chomsky, yeah, you're right. Agreed. I mean, there was a guy on, I think it was MSNBC, who said Nunez, Republican, but in investigations, Nunez was a Russian agent because Nunez released a memo defending Donald Trump. This is fucking amazing! How do you jump the shark this much? And it literally say that somebody in United States Congress is a Russian fucking agent. And I thought he has to be joking. He wasn't joking. This hack wasn't joking. He's accusing people of being Russian agents. You thought McCarthyism was bad. They were talking about communists at that point. This guy is literally talking about Russia itself as a country. Think about this. The United States destroyed Iraq. Destroyed it. It's within recent memory. The United States destroyed Libya. That's not hacking details and releasing information for an election. Destroyed. Obliterated. There's slave trades, open-air slave trades going in Libya right now based on what we were doing in that region of the world. Helping Saudi Arabia destroy Yemen. Paying terrorists, giving them resources to destroy Syria. Understand what I'm saying? These are fucking governments. And you're complaining to me about Russia hacking. You can understand that I'm not all that shocked, or I'm not all that bothered by this idea of Russian hacking in comparison to you actually destroying governments around the world and murdering people around the globe. It's like, come the fuck on. This is embarrassing that this is the discourse in this country. One party screams about immigrants as if immigrants are the entire problem of the United States, and the other party screams about Russia. Everybody's hating somebody. Everybody has a bad guy. None of the bad guys have any degree of reality associated with the issue, but everybody has their bad guy. The problem here is that both parties, neither party really has anything real. Both parties are bought and corporate owned. How do you make an argument for something when you're bought and the argument that you need to make is the exact argument that you can't make because you're paid not to make that particular argument? What do you do? What do you do? You scream Russia at the top of your lungs. You scream about immigrants at the top of your lungs. You completely obfuscate for the actual real issues and the things that affect people in their lives. And as things get worse and worse and worse, you continue to use things to kind of make ends meet without having to talk about the real issues of economics, employment, technological improvement, those type of things. Those things off the table. College, free school, all those things off the table. Healthcare, off the table. This idea of doing something about a Green New Deal, off the table. High-speed rail, off the table. All those things are off the table. And you don't have to question why. Why? Aren't those things important? Should those things be talked about? If you ever have the tendency to either be able to go to Europe or Google Europe and look at some of the things that they do, their standard of living in those countries, in those states. Germany is a right-wing nation. Look at what that right-wing nation provides to its citizens in comparison to what the United States provides here. You'll be appalled. You'll be appalled. What I'm getting across to you is your standard of living is determined by you. what you think your value as a human being is. You determine that. It's a collective determination. But if you allow these guys to say, we're going to get rid of Social Security, that's too much. We're going to get rid of Social Security. Then you've allowed them to get rid of Social Security. At some point, when do you burn this shit down? When do you say I'm done? When do you say enough? And the point I'm getting across to you is part of saying enough is being willing to say, no, I'm done. I'm done. The country has slid further and further to the right by voting for Democrats. Democrats have instantiated things that Republicans in no way could get done. When Clinton passed NAFTA, when Clinton destroyed Glass-Steagall, when Clinton destroyed this idea of the Telecommunications Acts. These were Democrats doing this. When Obama was trying to give up United States sovereignty under the Trans-Pacific Partnership, these were Democrats. When he enshrined Bush tax bill, that bill that was so ghastly and disgusting, that was horrible, that was worse than Trump's tax bill, when Obama enshrined 80%, more than 80% of that into law. Yeah, the Democrat is different. They scream about climate change and global warming. They scream about it. Oh my God, we believe in science. We believe in climate change. And the person who they put in was selling fracking all across the world when fracking is worse than regular oil methods due to the methane that's released. I'm just making this point that if you're telling me that there's an asteroid that's going to hit the planet, but you're not really doing anything substantively to stop the asteroid that's going to hit the planet, then I think you're full of shit. Don't tell me that Democrats are the best party to vote for. Keeping status quo is not a good thing to do. At some point, it needs to change. There needs to be a disruption. So, look, my point in this is, you're continuously sliding to the right. And the further you slide to the right, the worse things are going to get. And there is not an infinite level of right that you can slide to. At some point, you need to stop and put on the brakes. You put on the brakes based on you when you're tired of it. When you say, I'm done. That means being willing to pull yourself out the process. I'm done. I choose. In this case, I choose not to be a part of this process because none of you people represent my interests. There needs to be enough of you to be willing to say it does not represent my interests to make them lose. Meaning to not give them the capacity to win unless they're doing what they're told to do. Cowardice. Cowardice is a problem. And cowardice on the left, allowing these guys to do this, allows this to propagate itself. So that's the point I get at. That's my main point. Macro Segra. Jamal, have you talked about Libya and other standard of living before Gaddafi? The civilization game joke on Libya? Yeah. So Libya was, and these countries in general, like Iraq. We like to think in this country that those countries are lesser countries. They're lesser governments. Like they're somehow just not real governments. When the United States is toppling and kicking over something, well, they're just, these guys are just living in villages in the desert. These are real governments. Just as real as the United States. These are real countries. They have standard of living. They have ways of living. I mean, when they're having riots and when they're burning shit down, these are actual places being burnt down. It would be like no different than your place where you live being burnt down. That those places being burned and blowing up and people selling other human beings at those places. It would be no different. Human beings engaging in bad behavior. The society itself, however, they had a decent standard of living. So did Iraq. A secular country. Iraq is no longer that way. Libya is no longer that way. Syria is no longer that way. It's no longer that way. It's hard to get across the destruction that we've wrought on these countries, particularly in the Middle East. It's hard to get that across. And American citizens are somewhat blind to that, or for the most part, don't care. It's one thing when they had the draft in place and people were pissed off because their kid or their mom or their uncle or their dad was going into the draft. So you had these people out in the streets flipping out. What the United States realized was, well, wait a minute, we don't need the draft. We have enough useful idiots that are willing to join the military and go out there and fight and kill for what we would tell them to be for the country. Now, mind you, these are wars of aggression. But these guys have been trained and leveraged into this belief system that we're doing this for the country. It's not their fault. Yes, they decide to do this. And yes, the country and the people in this country, meaning the government itself, is leveraging the bravery of these people and what they consider to be patriotic duty. They don't know that patriotic duty doesn't exist. It only exists in their heads. They don't know that the idea of a country only exists in their heads. They don't realize that ultimately what they're going to do is going to fight and kill for the country or for the government itself. A few people who consider themselves the brain trust of the country itself. They're not fighting for the country. They're fighting for their government. That's a difference in those things. That's a difference, massive difference in those things. But in either case, we don't have to have a draft. We can use the 1% of the people that join, or 1 or 2%, and we can have those people fight in these miniature wars all throughout the world. We don't have to involve the rest of the population. And if the rest of the population is not involved, and the rest of the population does not care they were dropping 26,000 bombs in 2016. They don't care they were killing people and giving money to terrorists to kill all these other people. They don't care they have military in 70% of the globe. They don't care. We don't have to invest them in the draft, so they don't care. That's been our modus operandi for years. That's been the way we function for years. For years. Pippi Pippo. Everything the corporate Democrats accuse Russia for, the United States did in Brazil in the last 2 years. You're talking about that coup. So Brazil is interesting, man. I've been watching this. I've been listening to Glenn Greenwald's analysis of this. They usurped their election in Brazil, and they put in some neoliberal in office. So it's not like here where you had like a president and vice president. These guys are on the same ticket. They can have different tickets in Brazil. So you can have a vice president that is not on board with the party of the Workers' Party, even though you have a president that is in the Workers' Party. And that's exactly what happened. You had corruption charges going all through the Brazilian government. And those corruption charges were able to make their way to the top. Even though the people who were bringing those charges were corrupt themselves and had charges against themselves, many of the people who were accusing these guys, didn't matter. They still were able to topple that presidency and put in their neoliberal person. Yeah, Brazil is fascinating. What's taking place in Brazil is fascinating. Yeah, Glenn Greenwald. Yeah, Glenn Greenwald talks about this on Real News Network, and if I'm not mistaken, Democracy Now! He's had conversations about this. They've also talked about it recently on Real News Network, where they've gotten into some of the lawsuits, like I can't think of the guy's name. He was the president of Brazil at one point. The guy head of the Workers' Party. I would know the name when I hear it, but they're bringing charges against him, like for years in prison. While he's running, he's like running in the race, and these guys are trying to stop him from running in the race, and they're trying to stop this by putting a lawsuit on him. Now he filed an appeal, and they put more charges on him as a penalty for filing the appeal. It's fucking amazing. But what they're doing in Brazil is, yeah. And some of these guys have connections to people in the United States, meaning these guys either trained or work with people in the United States, and then end up in Brazil and end up in Brazilian government. Yes, Lula. That's it. Thank you. Fucking love my audience. Fucking love my audience. Yeah. BB Hammer. So no one is allowed to cite sources for their arguments here. What are you talking about? I just said Glenn Greenwald. By the way, Jamal, Germany is not a right-wing nation. Orthidium. Okay, understand what I mean with this. So Angela Merkel ran Germany for God knows how long, for years on it. And yeah, she was in a right-wing party, the Christian right-wing party. But when I say right-wing, I don't mean like right-wing here. And that's why I say you have to look at what Germany has. You're talking about healthcare, education, money to kids when a parent has kids, or because they want those kids to have the extra expenses. Meaning, the state itself looks after the citizens of that particular state, like the resources of that state is being used for the people of that particular state. And they've lost some of those things. Meaning, Germany has lost some of that stuff because again, they have right wingers. Angela Merkel is on the right. Tell me if I'm wrong with it, Ian. What am I missing? Now, yes, they work in collusion with other parties, meaning it's not just them. But Merkel herself was the one who was running that government, and Angela Merkel was considered on the right. Now, not by our terms, not in the United States terms. From the United States terms, she'd be like a greenie or something like that. She'd be a Green Party member. But Angela Merkel's on the Christian right. Now, she's in cooperation with, if I'm not mistaken, Social Democrats. And I thought somebody else. But I'm not huge on German politics, so I don't know all of it. I can't speak the language, so it's hard for me to understand what's going on. But at least in that part, I do know that part. Right now, from my understanding, they have a mixed government, meaning they don't necessarily have anybody heading the government. Angela Merkel is kind of taken on de facto, but ultimately, they're in a mixed government. They haven't had somebody or where they could cobble together a winning majority in order to take hold. But tell me if I'm wrong, Ophidian, or if I missed something. But from what I understand, from their perspective, in their context, in their politics, she's considered Christian right. Let's see. Jacqueline, you should see the jails in Germany. They're like hotels. A lot of training and education. Because they looked at this and said, this is what we want our bottom line to be. This is how we want to treat our people. We care about our citizens, so we care about our citizens. And I got to be honest, Germany has somewhat of an interesting past, so I would imagine that past is contributing to the way these guys have developed. But just Europe in general, if you take Germany out, just Europe in general, they have a higher standard of living. Communication, telecommunications, all those things, they have a higher standard of living than the United States. We look like a third world country. Captain Obvious, no, they're two asshats and they cat arguing with me and condemning everything I'm saying. Then JT repeats the same thing I'm saying. Germany is right if your goal is rehabilitation. Captain Obvious. Yeah, agree. Our goal isn't rehabilitation. We don't care about that. We just care about being strong and tough and fighting and punching people in the face. And we have military movies with these, solid chin guys that murder people. And it's like, oh, they're the heroes because they're murdering people for America. No, we believe in toughness, even when toughness doesn't necessarily give you the results that they want. That's what we believe in. That's our ideology. I don't care what they say in school. I don't care what people tell their kids. I'm talking about the real world ideology that this country functions by. So yeah, rehabilitation is not what we aim for. That's not what we're aiming for. We want punishment. We want putting people in cages. We want them to suffer and have hard times to get raped by other men while they're in the process of their quote-unquote rehabilitation. Yeah. I knew about the free speech issues, not about the harm against gays. Socks Avox. America won't be able to rebuild after climate change on top of the rubble. I guess my feeling is, does it have to crash before things change? That's what I'm stuck with. That doesn't necessarily make me feel great, but I have a workable point of view, and I've shared this workable point of view before, that people conform to the environment that they're in, like a Plinko chip, You have a consciousness, and that consciousness can move according to, what you care about, meaning you can push a particular way. And you can push against the current of society, but ultimately the majority of people go along with the current. Now, so I'm stuck with something. If the current tells people that, get rich and die trying, to maximize your profit even at the expense of everybody else, to if you have $9 billion, that's perfectly okay to have, and it is perfectly okay for that guy to have $9 billion and somebody else to be completely homeless, that guy have $9 billion and people go without healthcare and education, that we don't have infrastructure. Now, if your society is telling you that stuff is okay, that you getting rich, it doesn't matter how you do it, doesn't matter how many people you fuck over, doesn't matter the consequences and the trauma that you cause in your wake. If you can get rich, that's all that matters. You're a success. You have interesting things to say. You're a good and decent person. If that's your society, and that is our society, by the way, if your society allows people to go without, to not have access to their needs, even though you have the capacity to make sure that everybody on the planet has access to their needs, something is fundamentally wrong with your society. If your society is okay with environmental degradation and goes along with it, has no plan to deal with it, and still believes in this false sense of capitalism, this kind of religious belief that money, the thing that doesn't exist, should have sway over everything else, then yeah, you're a Plinko chip. This is not your choice of free will in this case. You're going along with a particular current. When, think about the person who wants to be a vegetarian. I think I had this conversation before, where it's like, fuck man, I don't want to eat meat. McDonald's, Burger King, Hardee's, Wendy's, just riding down Midlothian. Just riding down the street. This place sells hot dogs. This other place sells something else. Now, you as a person, there's a consciousness in you that says, I don't want this. I want to stop doing this. Everything in your society is telling you that this is okay, this is permitted, this is perfectly fine, this is just fine. Now, you intellectually know that they're wrong. You intellectually know that they're torturing animals, other life. You intellectually know that this is the second leading cause of environmental degradation for climate change. You believe in science. At the very least, you believe in the environmental science that comes out of this stuff. These guys build cars, they build boats, they build bombs, they build weapons. They explain our physical reality to us. I don't see why they will be completely wrong on this one. Why do I trust them to build this airplane that I'm in, but in no way trust the science in other situations? So you can see the problem here. Everything tells me that this is okay, in spite of me intellectually knowing that from an environmental standpoint, from a real world standpoint, it is not okay. Not to mention my taste buds love it. You were raised into it 40 years. Your taste buds love it. How do you go against that current? Yes. There's an intellect in you that doesn't want to do that. There's an intellect in you that feels a little bit bad every time you do it. There's an intellect in you that wants to push against that current. But just be aware that you are going against the current. That the majority of the people, the overwhelming majority of the people, we're talking about like 90%, goes along with that current. Free will is some degree of a myth. Something of a myth. I'm stuck with this realization that more likely than not, this crashes before it changes. That things get profoundly bad. That they get so bad that people realize that, oh wait, money isn't real. The real world is real, but money isn't real. And in this kind of desperate crash where everything falls apart, where all of these people die, the people who are cobbling up the rubble based on the trauma that they've just suffered in the collapse of their civilization, and maybe even the collapse of human life on this planet, if they can cobble together the rubble, they come up with something different. And something like a Venus Project where they say, you know what, that wasn't a good idea. The capitalism way was bound for failure. Those idiots should have seen that it was bound for failure. Those apes continued to do things that was destroying the world, even though it was very clear that it was destroying the world. Those apes did that based on something that was a myth. That was a figment of their imagination. That was purely just the thought form. And they pretended as if that thought form had some cooperation to the actual real world. It did not. Based on that trauma, what I'm hoping is they come up with something fundamentally different that is a cooperative environment that looks a little bit more like the Venus Project. But this, what we have, I feel like a push against the current. That's all I do. I have no expectation of ever succeeding in it. So yeah, there's that. Sonia worried. 99% of all species that have existed on Earth are extinct. That's 50%. We're all going to die before people get it. That's 50%. That's 50. It's something like within the last 40 years, like 50% of all the species on the planet has died off. Again, that's amazing. But that's us. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. BB Hammer, Gardner, same here about fast food, just road food truck. I cook at home, shop non-GMO and organic as much as possible. Indie restaurant food, so much better tasting and healthier, often cheaper. Yeah, we have Station 2. I was telling you, Station 2 is amazing. Food is much cheaper than what you would get out of a restaurant, per se. Humanely raised, right here in Richmond, or right here in Virginia. Yeah, man, I think it tastes better. There's another burger joint in Carytown that just opened. It's saying, humanely raised. Food tastes fucking amazing. It's much better. Jacqueline Thompson, BB Hammer, exactly. Humans are making ourselves irrelevant. Unfortunately, yes. Robert Pouquet Ray, I've heard most workplaces are hostage situations. People can't leave because their livelihoods are held. They are. Look, I've said you can choose your plantation, but it is a plantation. So you have serfs who work the land of a lord or something that moves to slavery, who's working the land of a master. And then now they've expanded the slavery thing. So, yes, okay, you're not slaves, you're not hostages. But, one caveat. If you don't choose one of the plantations, you're going to die of hunger, thirst, and not have health care and not participate in the economy and society. Now, it's one thing if we don't have the resources in this country to make sure people have the things that they need. We have the resources. We use that as this vulgar compulsion method of whipping somebody into a job and into some kind of career. Oftentimes, it's things that they're completely alienated from the labor that they're doing, completely hate it, and is only doing it for a paycheck. And sometimes you're stuck, scared that if you leave the job, you're not going to be able to get health care. Because at this point, we've locked in health care with workplaces. This is just a propagation of the last system, slavery. Master and slave, boss and worker. It's just well, what's the word you want to use it? A slight shift. It's not a change, it's a shift. It's the same dynamic that you're working with before. So, you resist to retain your soul. I resist because there's nothing else to do. ETs wipe out our all competing species for food. Well, at that point, we have a hard case to make. I mean, we've been eating animals for God knows how long. If they have a cookbook to serve human because one of them tasted us 2,000 years ago and it took 100 years for them to get back here, and they're like, let's stock up, guys. We have pens in the back. Let's bring them on. Let's fatten them up. Here's our cookbook. Serve man. Serve man. Hey, Jamal, can you do a quick recap the first 2 hours regarding the topic and the title? All right, so yeah, Captain Obvious. Ultimately, what I was asking was, why do people have feelings or such feelings or hardship feelings against TYT? And I was kind of making this point that there seemed to have been a change in the way that they operate before the election versus after the election, using Dore as this kind of bellwether. Because Dore really didn't change. Dore was, for the most part, fundamentally the same. And he was one of the people who were on that show who was anti-Hillary. She was completely against this idea of just falling in line and voting for Hillary Clinton. I was making the point that the reason people are pissed off and dislike them is to some degree because you have many of these people who actually did at one point like TYT. And they felt betrayed when they switched for Hillary Clinton. And I gotta be honest, it seems like shilling for Donald Trump. I mean, shilling for Clinton or the Democrats with this idea of Donald Trump and Clinton or Trump and Russia. I showed this clip of Dore and Ben Mankiewicz going at it full on. Everybody else on the show is Clinton. Jimmy Dore is not, and Mankiewicz is somewhat talking down to him, like you know, how dare you not vote for Hillary Clinton in this kind of way? But Jimmy flipping out. I showed another clip where I had a conversation with Dore where I was asking him about the TYT thing, and him saying that yes, there was hurt feelings to some degree, but we mended those ends, and we feel like we're almost on the same page. But they're not on the same page. I mean, Dore has been going after Democrats whole hog. TYT. And I showed the page itself so you can see the videos that were on the page. It's Trump and Russia with an MSNBC-like feeling to it. On the recent show that Jimmy Dore did for the State of the Union, he kind of made this strong point about indie media, saying if you're on the left and you're falling in for this shit, then you're a useful idiot. And it's like, well, you're on a network, on the left-leaning network. Clearly, if he's saying this, it's some degree talking about TYT is the main show. Essentially is on board for this particular rhetoric, meaning the Trump and Russia stuff. Dore has never been on board for the Trump and Russia stuff. In fact, he's been completely against the Trump and Russia stuff, going after Sanders for it. You can understand that there's still somewhat of a conflict there when you have one show that's ferociously independent, and it's associated with a network that has been, I'm not saying that the donor thing is an impact, but based on TYT's own arguments about politicians taking a lot of money, do contributions change behavior, or do they create each other in the behavior? We don't know if that's true for TYT, so I'm not putting that on the table as being true for TYT. What I am saying is there is a clear Trump and Russia thing that seems to run through that channel in the same way that Trump and Russia thing runs through MSNBC, CNN, and regular mainstream news. And people who are pissed off about this usually bring up the fact that A, we feel like we're being scammed in regards to the money that they're taking, and B, Trump and Russia is not the entirety of the news that we want to discuss. I asked the question of what is it, why are people pissed? And I come up with the conclusion that that's why people are somewhat pissed. It's not that they're just trolls, it's not that they just completely hate the show. I read this thread with somebody who worked at TYT making the point that, yeah, the show has fundamentally changed. That the change was almost immediate, and that people like Jimmy Dore were no longer allowed on the main show because Dore, for the most part, was against that main narrative. And that stories like Flint, and those type of things, if those things are not CNN type, MSNBC types, are probably not going to end up on the show. They made the point that the show fundamentally changed. And I would make the argument that people are pissed off. Now, don't get me wrong. You still have a lot of people who love TYT, but I'm talking about the significant portion that's pissed off about the content and the way that TYT has been playing this since the election. So that was my point, that it seems that there was somewhat of a change or shakeup, and that the reason why people dislike the show has to do with the way the show has changed. I know what the show was like during the primaries. And I was glued to TYT during the primaries. Rebel headquarters. Rebel headquarters. There's something in me, this little thing in me that tweaks up a little bit when I think about what that means. But I showed the clip where Cenk Uygur said, vote Hillary. I let him make his case. I let him run for 5 minutes, making his case on why he was voting for Hillary Clinton, why he thought Clinton was the best person to vote for in this particular process. Making an argument that it doesn't mean I'm supporting her, it just means I'm giving her a vote. That's like Donna Brazile writing all of this stuff about Hillary Clinton was taking all of this money and how it was breaking campaign finance laws, but at the last sentence. But this wasn't illegal. It was just unethical. My voting for Hillary Clinton is not my support. It's just my vote. It's like, okay. That's my summary. There's no smoking gun here because the goal wasn't a smoking gun. The goal was to kind of ask the question of why are people pissed off about TYT? Give me an honest explanation. You know, don't be a troll. Be honest. And what can TYT do to fix that? That's what I want to know. Some of the people seem pissed. And the pissed offness seemed to have come from this thing of, this is a network that we liked. We feel like this network has been despoiled, and we feel like we lost this network. This argument that some people make in politics of, I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me. That type of stuff. So, be honest. Give me an honest opinion. We've talked for like 2 hours about people's honest opinion on this stuff. The conversation, of course, you know, swayed and moved. But ultimately, that was the tenor of the conversation. So, I'm going to leave this here. Guys, I thank you all for showing up today. We've had a big crowd here for this one, so very nice. Everybody that's donated and given super cash, thank you. You guys are immensely appreciated. You help keep this show running. So I want to thank you. If you guys enjoy the content, of course, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys.